ABC AFL Daily is the best conversation in footy. Hosted by Corbin Middlemass and Ben Cameron, alongside regulars like Mick Malthouse.
And I don't remember too many games, but it's one of the ones I remembered. It was just that physical.
Bob Murphy.
Where do you guys get off thinking you can pick and choose?
And more. It keeps you in the loop with the biggest stories in the AFL and the number one analysis in the game. ABC AFL Daily. 5 eps a week on ABC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music, and more.
Argentina, champions of the world! 36 years since Maradona and Mexico. Here, finally, is a nation's new throng of immortals. Scaloni will be fated. Messi will be sainted.
In 2022, when Lionel Messi finally received his World Cup coronation, we expected that it was the last time we'd see him at the biggest show on earth. And given Kylian Mbappe had just scored a hat-trick in a losing side, well, it seemed that the next king was ready to ascend. Spin forward 4 years to now, and after 100 games of World Cup football at the 2026 tournament, it's clear these two remain still at the summit of the game from an individual standpoint. They're on opposite sides of the draw, and a potential final rematch is very much in play. But what do we know about them beyond their footballing excellence? Today, we are talking to two world-class writers who have written the respective book on each of them. I'm Patrick Stack. This is ABC Sport Daily World Cup Special. Guillem Balague is an author and podcaster who's won a litany of awards. He covers football. He's written on Ronaldo, Guardiola, Maradona, and of course, the man we want to talk about today. He literally wrote the book on Lionel Messi. Guillem, I wanted to understand, when you saw Lionel Messi coming to this tournament, approaching 39 years of age, the rest of the football world maybe didn't see the level of performance that we have seen across the tournament so far from him. Did you expect that he still had this level of greatness in him?
Well, we knew that the context was right for him because he was defined by Scaloni around what he could do on the pitch in a way that no other manager had managed to do. I think managers of the past had their own idea how the team had to work. And then, of course, they wanted Messi to fit in. But the only time where really there are many times where you've seen the best Messi is when the managers have identified how you can get the best out of Messi. Pep Guardiola did that, of course, and you have to go back to Newell's Old Boys when he was a 10-year-old, and they will move the striker away because he was on the way. So even then, the context was placed so Messi could shine. And Scaloni did that. And since he did that, guess what? They haven't stopped winning. The last 4 competitions that entered, they won. The last 3 semi-finals they're in, they won. Not surprising fully in that they're getting the best out of Messi. What it is a little bit surprising is that, you need a little bit of luck always to go your way. You need others to help sometimes, like Julien Laurens. And all those things have happened to take Argentina to this stage. But this Argentina is set to play in a slow motion, if you like, so he can shine. And he's taking advantage of it. He's definitely shining.
Back to Messi. Messi! 1 of 1. Never to be replicated.
It's been a hell of a thing to watch him keep shining. I wonder, you're someone who knows him so much better than most. He's a very private person. You've done an incredible job sort of helping the world understand this guy a little bit better. We see the brilliance from a long way away. We don't know the person, and I think the fact that he speaks very little in English makes the connection more challenging for the Anglosphere, and that's an us problem, not a him problem. But maybe you, as someone who's been so embedded with him, could you tell us about who he is as a person?
You make a very good point on purpose, even though he tried for a year and a half to learn English, not his thing. Languages are not his thing, so he just abandoned that. But that means that he's become still a little bit enigmatic, and the book is selling, especially in the Anglo-Saxon world, because you need to understand, or when you see somebody like him, you need to understand where all that comes from. And what the book does is, again, to put the context, if he was an Argentinian, and all this is relevant to his personality. If he was an Argentinian, he wouldn't have been the player he is. In fact, you know that his family tried to emigrate or thought of emigrating to Australia before he was born. So he would have been in an Australian team, and we would have said, oh, look, that guy of Argentinian descent, how well he's doing for the Yellows. And that would have been it, because you actually need a country that sees football not as the most important thing of the least important things, but the most important thing of the most important things. So football is absolutely everything. And you have to have been given the opportunity to grow in the right club to develop your best traits like Barcelona. But without him being a rock falling down a mountain, unstoppable, not saying ambitious and he would do anything to get to where he wants to, but he cannot be stopped. And you just have to, again, put the right environment for him to be the best. And then once he walks out of that pitch, it's just a normal guy, virtually shy more than explosive with his humor, of his wording, unlike most Argentinians. He just likes to be with his family. He likes to be bored and doing nothing when he's at home, apart from playing with his kid, with the two dogs he's got. This is what, in inverted commas, excite him. But he has found himself, and this is interesting, to have gone back to that Rosario boy of 12 when he left. Because with the people that he's got around him, the players, they're like a street gang. They've got the senses of humor that kids of 12 in Rosario, in the streets of Rosario had. So he's loved that this group has been created around him. And, when they sing songs after a win, some of the songs mention Messi. That must be a little bit weird. He doesn't sing that particular song, but there's such an awe. They're completely in awe of him. They will do anything for him. Leandro Paredes has said that they want to keep playing so Messi doesn't play his last game for Argentina. They want to keep winning that way. They all use the same boots, which are Messi boots. And that kind of, it's not an ego thing for him. It's just to feel at home. And when he feels at home is when he feels at his best. Feeling at home is great for him. Feeling at home on the pitch is how you get the best Messi.
That's really interesting that you say that. And I wonder how much it was a conscious choice to make the United States his home ahead of a World Cup largely based in the United States, and whether that's tied into the excellence that we're seeing on the biggest possible stage.
There is a bit of a strategy about things happening with him, a little bit. But there wasn't any strategy about him leaving Barcelona. He didn't want to. He wasn't going to leave 3 days before, he thought. And then the tears that everybody saw, and the tears at home as well, meant that they broke his heart, and he had to decide quickly. So he went to Paris, 2 years where he wasn't happy. But I think he started realizing that as the return to Barcelona was not possible, then what next? And it was presented to him a major opportunity, linking himself with brands like Adidas and Apple in the biggest commercial country in the world, when a World Cup is heading that way, with a club that gives him the opportunity to go into the offices and own or co-own a club when he finishes. All those things were attractive enough on a nation that started to look at football in a different way. But yes, it's worked possibly better than he even thought it would. He's won the league with Inter Miami, has won cups with them.
Messi settles, and that's it! Ties the World Cup,
And now he's basically the superstar of the biggest World Cup we've ever seen. It is the biggest in terms of numbers, commercial, money. And he is at the front of all of that.
I got a really good glimpse into just how very much he is at the front of that when I saw some vision of him trying to leave a restaurant in recent weeks, being absolutely mobbed by American fans. And I know that that's sort of part and parcel of his life, but can you give us a sense of how it is to be at the centre of that storm, a point of universal focus and adoration? It must be a heck of a thing.
What is amazing is that despite all of that, and yes, wherever he goes, he's got to give time to people. And he knows that from very early on. I remember his dad telling me that he was getting a little bit the wrong way under the tutelage of Ronaldinho at Barcelona. One day Ronaldinho came out of the car park and there was people waiting for him to sign things, and he just rushed with his car away. And Messi did the same. He was only 18, 19. And his dad was with him and he said, you know that roundabout? Turn around, park the car where the kids are, and you sign everything. And I think he's realized since then that he's got to pay something back, if you like, to the adulation that he's got all over the world. But he has got an air of normality that he's never abandoned. He takes his kids to school when he was in Barcelona, not so much in Miami, but he was in the WhatsApp group with the parents. It's mostly Antonella who does that kind of job, but he used to. And he likes to share time with the parents because when the kids get together for parties and so on, he wants to know who the parents are. So there's that air of normality around him. And again, when he goes to the national side, it's like going back to his youth. So what a great combination of things for him to find happiness, which he has done. I think still be stone in his shoe that he couldn't stay at Barcelona longer, but at some point he'll return. Meanwhile, he keeps winning World Cups with Argentina.
Just the idea of having Lionel Messi in my father's WhatsApp chain, that is something else. Especially because, as you sort of detail in his book, he's a pretty private person in some regards and has a small circle of people around him. How is it that a writer like you manages to get into that inner sanctum? Because I imagine you're not the first person who wants to write a book on Lionel Messi.
No, in fact, when I asked about it, I was told, no, we're not helping writers. Books have come out. They didn't ask us anything, and they're full of lies, and lies have been repeated. And so, well, how about if we actually tell the truth? That kind of opened up the door a little bit. And that was when he was 25, 26. And then it was 2 year research and 2 years of traveling and asking the right people. And they would tell me, just ask us who you're talking to, because there are people I've interviewed before I started doing that project that gave me stories of what they used to do when they coached Messi, and they never coached Messi in their lives. So you really need to be careful who you're talking to. At the end of that writing journey, it was Messi's dad who said, listen, we're proud of having helped you. You've done a good job. If you want to call it authorized, you can. And still is the only authorized biography that is out there. And since then, because you've entered the circle, I started presenting events, commercial events with him. We sold razors and phones, and we sold perfumes. And then whenever there's been the need to update it, and I've updated it 6 times, they've always opened the door. Okay, let's talk. Let's tell the story from Leo's point of view. And that's what the book is, Leo's point of view on his departure of Barcelona, his departure of PSG, winning the World Cup, all of that. So I feel honestly privileged to have been part of that, of writing that story.
It's an incredible thing to be sort of the conduit between him and the footballing world. And the fact that when he won the World Cup in 2022, I think we all assumed that was the end of it for him from a World Cup standpoint.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't think so? I
I said it at the time.
Am I correct in saying that he was saying it was the end, though?
No, you misunderstood. You all misunderstood what he was saying. He says, logically, this should be my last World Cup. He never said it was. And then I'm telling you, and this is an educated guess, he finishes his contract with Inter Miami in a year and a half before the next World Cup. A World Cup that's going to be played in Argentina, one game, where right now, he's the best goal scorer of the World Cup, the best goal scorer of the MLS, and so he was last season, the best goal scorer of the qualifiers. I don't know if he's still got another World Cup in him, but logically, this should be the last one.
To me, it sounds like you believe he's definitely got one more in him. What would be driving him at this point? What is it that he derives the joy from, or the need to continue going?
That's a good point, because the drive is the group, is the manager, is obviously he loves football, is the national team, he's wearing the shirt, but mostly is the group. He absolutely loves it. But it will be the end of the Paul, I imagine, of Otamendi, I don't know, of El Dibu, of Emiliano Martinez, maybe some others. And then when you start having to introduce new people, new blood, new energy, new relationships, it may just not be as fanciful as having had this group together for, in the case of De Paul, 9 years. In the case of Scaloni, 6 years or so. So to break this down, if Scaloni leaves or some players leave, it may just make him think. But I think he still may have another Copa America in him. That's 2 years. As I said, he would be, if he had left Inter Miami, or maybe, the Copa America would be 6 months after the contract finishes, the one he's got. But he may renew it. The decision will be made year by year. It's not a clear top case. As I thought it was in the last World Cup in Qatar, I thought, no, he's not going to leave just yet. But next year, we'll see. Maybe we have to get used to the fact that there won't be a Messi around at some point wearing the Argentina shirt.
That's something I don't want to contemplate. We've at least got one more game in this World Cup to watch him play, and it's been a hell of a thing to do so far through this tournament. Guillem, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're just on the cusp of going to a press conference with France, so thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Julien Laurens is a French football writer and reporter. You would have seen his work with ESPN. He has written the definitive biography on Kylian Mbappe, which is pretty handy because he's probably the biggest star in the Football World Cup right now, alongside Lionel Messi. Few know this star better, so we're going to pick Jules' brain to understand Kylian better. Jules, hello.
Hello, mate. How are you?
Mate, I'm really well. I'm so glad to have you today to talk about Kylian Mbappe. I mean, this is a guy, we were talking about him with Mark Schwarzer and the fact that his personal stats for Madrid this year, like typically elite, but he'd had a really hard time in the sense they didn't win a major trophy, getting vitriol from fans. Watching him in this tournament, I feel like there's been a joy and a lightness to his excellence. I don't know whether I'm just projecting what I want to see, but it certainly feels, watching him on the television, that is the case. Are you sensing that? And if so, why is that, do you think?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think there's some sort of liberation that happened between the end of the season with Real Madrid and him coming to the World Cup with France. I think that's what international football does to a lot of players, not just Kylian, but for a lot of them, it's sometimes a breath of fresh air to go away from club football on a daily basis, fans and games all the time and training all the time and things like that. And international football means usually World Cups or Euros or whatever your Asian Cup or AFCON, whatever Copa America, whatever your competitions are, really. But it also means different environment, different teammates, different coach, also different media, not maybe the same scrutiny. Certainly, it's slightly different coverage, I think, than what a season at club level would be. And I think in his case, certainly he welcomed that. There's something that triggers, I think the World Cup triggers something in him. And we've seen that since 2018, really, and then 2022, and now this in 2026, that makes the whole occasion very special. He feels, I think, even more committed and involved now that he's the French captain at 27 and 2 games away from another great achievement. So I think there was always going to be something special for him coming into this World Cup, coming into this tournament in a country in the US where he's much loved. He's one of the big profiles of this World Cup here. He's done a lot of work in the US before. I think he has a lot of fans over here already. So I think all that, the combination was going to be probably a great World Cup for him. I would say, and I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I think that so far what he's achieved in this World Cup has gone beyond what he thought he could be by at this stage, if you see what I mean. Now he also knows that the hardest bit starts now.
Incredible to think that in 2022 he scored a hat-trick in the World Cup final and still lost. As you say, whether it's that World Cup, the fact that he's already won one before that, he's just 27 years of age. I just wonder how much you feel that what happened in 2022 is driving what we're seeing on the global stage here at this tournament.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of frustration despite the hat-trick in the final, and he made history.
Mbappe. Into the galaxy of greats!
Obviously, he lost it. We lost it as a country. And despite him saying, individual records or achievements are nothing if you don't end up winning the whole thing, the biggest prize as a team. And I get that. He also knows, and he knew at the time, that he'd done something very, very special that nobody will ever forget, because I don't even think it would be done again. So it's just him and Pelé to score in a World Cup final as teenagers. It's him and Geoff Hurst to score a hat-trick in a World Cup final. And again, I don't think we will see anyone doing that again. Or if there is somebody else, and could well be Lamine Yamal in this tournament, it would be a very short list. But you're right. I think the frustration of not winning in 2022 when they were so close of one of the greatest comebacks in football history, and then winning a back-to-back World Cup, which Brazil was the last one to do in 58-62, so a very long time ago, then I think that kind of bitterness is very much one of the reason that drives this team in this tournament, that drives him one extra motivation, if you want. And I think that in those 4 years between, or 3.5 years between the Qatar World Cup and this World Cup, it has been an obsession in Kylian's head to come back and almost redeem himself and avenge himself and the team from 2022.
And there's not like there hasn't been a lot going on the home front from a club perspective as well. Like, you've written about this in your book, and I was talking to Guillem Balague about Lionel Messi and being at the centre of the footballing universe, and there's probably only two guys who can understand that experience intrinsically, being Lionel and Kylian, and the two authors being, Guillem and yourself. There's an ongoing meme about the idea of Mbappe the dictator, and like he's even joked about it with his goal celebrations. And I guess that emanates from his club career. Like, this is a huge star. He's had the limelight with people simultaneously like Messi and Neymar. I just wanted to know from you, for someone who was so plugged into his career, what can you tell us about the challenges he has had at Madrid, PSG, etc., in terms of navigating the power dynamics and the perceptions externally of who he may or may not be?
Yeah, he's one of the smartest players and human beings, not just players, that I've ever met. The ambition, the drive, but that's fine. You can be very ambitious and not being very smart. But he's got that all which enables him to perform in very different environments and atmospheres. I think he can be very good diplomatically. He can be very good with people. He can be very good with top bosses, if you want, or presidents or prime ministers, whatever, you name it, or big like CEOs of big companies. He can be very good with fans, across the corner, across the road, for example. He can be very good with coaches. He's super smart and super adaptable. And I think in a career like this, where you are in the spotlight since you're 16, 17, and you will be until you retire, and probably beyond too, I think you need that to be able to escape or avoid problems, avoid issues, knowing what to say, when not to say, what maybe people expect you to say, or certainly, picking your words rightly. And also, I think, certainly with him, I've never really seen him overwhelmed, that's for sure, but it was always measured. So you're heavily criticized by some of the Real Madrid fan base. He understood some other big players have been there before, like Benzema, like Cristiano, like Di Stefano, even some of the greatest players, not just in Real Madrid history, but in football history. And he knew, you don't get bogged down by it. Don't try to overcompensate it. Same when things work, when he scored a hat-trick against Manchester City in the Champions League and everybody's raving about him, including the same fan base that a few months later would boo him. Again, he doesn't get carried away, doesn't get above himself and things like that. And for that, he's very good. And that, I think, comes with education, and his mum and his dad, who were always very grounded and very good with him and his older brother, adoptive brother, and younger brother. But also the fact that he knows too well how quick football can go one way or the other. And one day you are at the top and everybody loves you, and then not that long later, and you don't really understand why or how, but they're booing you and don't think that you're doing enough, or you're running enough, or you're defending enough, or you're scoring enough, or you're winning enough. I think what Real Madrid fans are seeing right now in this World Cup is the Mbappe that they want. And this is the Mbappe that they will get next season and for many years to come. But I think they're watching this World Cup and his performances thinking like, okay, this is it, because he's our player.
If you had to say there was a weakness, maybe there isn't one. What would be the weak spot or the Achilles heel of Kylian Mbappe?
The one thing I think is maybe he could be too harsh with himself. He's so driven and he wants to be the best and he wants to achieve everything he can achieve in the game, that I think that maybe take a bit of his toll on him by being so demanding with himself. And I think he's great. And I think if you look at all the greatest of the greatest in their sports, all of them, I think, were wired differently than you and me, for example. If you look at Michael Jordan, if you look at Usain Bolt, if you look at Max Verstappen, you can pick any sport and we go with the GOAT in that sport, their mentality is very different than a normal guy like you and I. Sometimes that kind of mentality, because you can only be very demanding with yourself and then with others, sure, but also with yourself first and foremost, that can be difficult to manage sometimes and to cope with. And I think that's maybe the only thing, because, for example, and as a PSG fan, I loved him staying that long in Paris, but he stayed too long. Why did he stay so long? Because he really wanted to be the one bringing the Champions League to the city for the first time ever. And that ambition and that drive he had, and how demanded he was with himself of like, I have to do it, I have to make it happen. It's not just him, is with Neymar and with Messi and all those teams that he had at PSG over the 7 years. But he could have gone after 2, after 3, after 4, after 5, after 6. And yet he stayed that long because he loved the city and he loved the club, and great. And teams were good for him and the club was good to him. But because he had that desire to win the Champions League for the first time with that team and bring that trophy back to Paris. And I think that, for example, maybe it was a weakness in itself, where he could have said 5 years is enough now. I need to move on and go and achieve some other things somewhere else. It's a shame for the Champions League, but yet he stayed longer because he really wanted that. And maybe that judgment misled him because he was so demanding with himself and he really wanted to achieve that.
You're someone who has covered Kylian Mbappe for a decade and a half plus. I just wanted to understand if you could talk to me about the first time you saw him play and what made him so special then, that sort of captured you, that you were like, whoa, this kid is special.
Yeah, it's really easy. And I say in the book, I'm from Paris. I was born there. Then I moved to London 23 years ago now. And I thought I would stay there for 6 months and then I haven't left. But my friend, a lot of the Laurens' family is still in Paris, and all my best friends are there. And one of them is Charlie, who we've played together football when we were like 17, 18, 19, etc. And he knows everything, Charlie, about the kind of microcosm of football in Paris, which is a big world because it's so big, but a very small world because everybody knows each other, everybody knows about all the clubs and all of that. And Charlie who's a really good player, has a great eye for talents. It's just simple as that. And one day he calls and said, listen, there's this boy that everybody's talking about at Bondy, so north of Paris. Him and I are from the east and Kylian is from the north, saying like, everybody's raving about him. We have to go and see him. Next time you come for the weekend, we go and see him. A few weeks later, I'm in Paris for the weekend. We go together, we watch Bondy, and obviously, anybody can watch. It's just under 13 football. So we go in and there's this tiny skinny boy with a shirt too big for him who plays 2 years up, and that's Kylian. And you needed, 5 minutes to see how talented he was and what a phenomenon he was, really. And we were sat there with Charlie in the Bondy tiny stand in the local stadium where they played, and then you just knew straight away. And we were lucky enough to see Nicolas Anelka when he was young, because he was just a couple of years older than us, and we were playing for the county team and he was playing for the county team the year above. We saw Thierry young, we saw Ben Arfa young, we saw all those kind of Paris prodigy street players, and it was just exactly the same impression that we had of Kylian than we had with all those players I mentioned, because they were all phenoms. And I remember me and Charlie driving back after the game and saying like, okay, if nothing goes wrong, like an injury or something really, really bad, so he was 11 at the time. So we said in 5 years' time, he will be already on the book of a big club in France or in Europe, and not far from making his professional debut. And that's exactly what happened with him at Monaco. So it's funny because that first time, you just never forget it. Whoever it is, and it could be the same with you, the first time you see a pro, it doesn't have to be a young kid. Even a pro, you rarely forget the first time you see players like that.
It's so interesting to understand the level of focus on him at such a young age, from then all the way through to now. And this is a guy who, as you write about in the book, obviously won a World Cup 19. You spoke about the Pele stat just earlier. How has he changed from that World Cup to now, if at all?
The one thing that hasn't changed and will never change is his love for the game and his passion for football. And trust me, there are a lot of players who are pros, playing for top clubs, earn a lot of money, played international football, who don't really like football. They don't watch it outside of them playing it. They don't rewatch their games. Some of them probably hardly knows who they play next week. Kylian is very different. For that, he's like Thierry Henry again. Kylian is just obsessed with the game. He knows every team, every player, every result, every goal, just everything. You can name a player and he will give you a full profile, what he is like, what he doesn't like, the qualities, the flaws, everything. And that love will never change. And Faiza, his mum, always says he would not be there if he didn't have that love for it, because his life is hard enough. And I know from the outside we look at it, he's a millionaire 100 times. He's got a great life. Sure, he's a footballer in one of the best countries in the world and one of the best teams in the world, if not the greatest team in the greatest club in the world. But his life is not easy. And the love of the game, I think, is also what has made him choose this life, and also going through this life like he is, with all the success, the highs and the lows. So that will never change, I think. The rest He's more famous. He's richer, he's better. Even than when I saw his debut for Monaco, when he signed for PSG, when he won that World Cup in 2018 at 19 years old. It's just everything is bigger. He's bigger as a profile, as a superstar worldwide. And I see it again here in the US. That's the life he chose. He can't go to the bakery like you and I to buy his baguette. He can't go to do a normal holiday. He can't take a normal flight either because, there would be like riots or stuff. So it's a different life. That's the life he chose, and that's the life he knew was programmed. He was programmed to achieve, and he's there. And there's only good things to come now because he's going to enter his peak years, really. But yeah, I wonder sometimes if maybe he thought it would be like that. That's it. And again, he said it himself, he was programmed for this. Programmed for success. His mom and dad they had a pathway for him. Everything, like the famous project Mbappe, was nailed on by mom and dad. But yeah, it's a life where you don't really have much freedom and you don't have much of a life.
I just got to ask to finish up, how good is it to be a Frenchman in the world of football right now? You got to be like a pig in mud, surely.
And you know what? It's even better is being a PSG fan and French too, because it will always be PSG and Paris first for us anyway. And to have gone back-to-back Champions League winners, having gone through the first final against Inter Milan in Munich. I mean, 2 of my 3 children were there. Charlie was there, all the best friends, all my cousins, brothers, etc. And then to go again a year later in Budapest and go back-to-back. So that in itself first was amazing.
And on 90 minutes, the whistle blows. The city of Paris gets its title. PSG are champions of Europe for the first time.
And then to see France doing so well now in this World Cup. And this is not new because obviously the last 14 years under Didier Deschamps, things have been great at World Cups and Euros. But the last Euros 2 years ago, the football was poor despite getting to the semi-final. This time the football is amazing. This team is amazing. The superstars in this team are amazing. I just hope now, as we record this the day before the semi-final against Spain, that they will go all the way because they really deserve it. I think they've been the best team. I think they are the best team left in the tournament of the 4. So I think they can go all the way.
Hard to disagree. Jules, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much. Good luck for the semi-final.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Anytime.
That is it for today. This episode was produced by Poppy Penny. Thanks to Apple TV, FIFA, SBS DAZN and Premier Sports for the extra audio used in this episode. Catch you tomorrow after semi-final number 1.